Hello Internet people, it's Llwyd from Historic Outdoors, and today we're in my kitchen with something that came from outdoors. We've got a beaver. In the medieval era, beaver was fairly highly prized for its meat. People quite liked it. Because it had a tail that resembled a fish, the Catholic Church even declared it a fish so they could eat it on Friday and on their lean days. So yeah, it was fairly highly sought after and hunted to extinction in some places. But in the medieval bestiaries, they said that the beaver was so smart and it knew it was hunted for its testicles, and so when it was being chased by hunters, it would lift its leg and bite its testicles off and leave them on the ground so the hunter wouldn't kill it. And the other version of the story says that if it was a female beaver, that it would lift its leg, or if it had previously bitten them off, it would lift its leg and show the hunter that it didn't have any testicles and therefore wasn't worthy to be hunted, and so it could escape. This might have just been a Christian allegory about divesting yourself of vice or evil or whatever, or it could have been stories written down by guys that lived cloistered in monasteries and didn't really get outside and do too much, kind of like university professors. But anyway, we're going to cook up this beaver and see what it tastes like. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this beaver's tail off. You hear stories from the 19th century and the 18th century about beaver tail being quite the delicacy. This may or may not be true depending on the time of year that the beaver was killed. So you can see by the thickness of this tail that this was a spring beaver or early summer, because if this was a fall beaver, his tail would be really fat and really thick. And there's quite a bit of fat in this, but there's not that much. And this was also a trapped beaver, not a hunted beaver. So there's still quite a bit of blood in this. So before I can make this palatable, I've got to get some of that blood out, because it's really gamey and it's not going to taste very good. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rub this guy with salt and I'm going to soak him for 24 hours. So if you are a medieval huntsman, you're probably going to be killing your beaver with a spear or some other implement that's sharp and pokey, and it's going to bleed out, and because it bleeds out, you're not going to have to do this. But this here is what they call a nuisance beaver. I don't think that beavers are a nuisance, but some people do. And because this beaver was a nuisance to somebody, he ended up in a trap. And when beavers get trapped, well, one can hope that they die instantly, but even if they do, they end up underwater and filled with blood. They don't get a chance to bleed out. And that is just going to taste like crap. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this guy in rock salt. And this is the head end and this is the butt end. And I'm not going to spare the salt here. I'm going to use quite a bit. I'm using about 1.5 cups of salt. And what this is going to do is this is going to start to dehydrate my beaver, but it's going to pull all that blood out of him, which I do not want. So now I'm going to get this in a pot and I'm going to fill it up with water. So the beaver's tail was thought of as a delicacy in medieval times, and all the way through the 17th and 18th century here in Canada, even the 19th century. But the beaver tails that they were talking about were fall beavers, and oh, the tail would be considerably wider, considerably thicker. It's kind of like a camel's hump, a beaver tail. They store a lot of fat in there all summer, and then in the winter, when they don't have much to eat except for what they've stored for the winter, they live off the fat reserves. So this being a spring beaver, there's really not much to eat on this. I mean, there's a bit. There's some good meat in there. Don't get me wrong, but it is mostly fat. And the reason why it was a delicacy, you know, 300, 400, 500 years ago, is because fat was really hard to come by. A lot of game animals were quite lean, and this had a lot of fat in it. So this was very nutritious. We don't have that problem today. If you want to get fat, it's not too hard in the 21st century. So from 21st century perspective, this probably tastes like crap. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to render the fat out of it, and maybe I'll mix it with beeswax and beaver fat, and I'll use that mixture to, you know, to put on my leather and to preserve stuff with. So I'm not going to eat the beaver tail. I'm going to eat the beaver itself. But this would not have been wasted in the medieval era. It's just I've eaten gamey animals before, and there's nothing tastes any worse than gamey fat. There's no way to cook it that it doesn't taste like an alderbush. But if you were lost in the woods, oh boy, this would be quite the find. Anyway, we're gonna soak our beaver now. So after you bake a beaver tail, whether that's in the oven or by a campfire, it kind of swells up, and the outside turns kind of leathery, and it kind of cracks and explodes. And as you can see, this being a spring beaver, there's a bit of fat in there, but not much. And some people just absolutely love the taste of that, but I suspect that they're kind of desperate. And as you can see, the tail itself just kind of cracks, kind of like tortilla chips. But anyway, the fat renders out, and you can use that for stuff, or you can eat it if you're the kind of person that's pretty desperate. I don't like the taste of beaver fat. It tastes like a swamp or an alderbush. So I'm not going to be using it for eating. I'm going to be using it for other projects. But yeah, this was very highly sought after in some circles and in some time periods. And for me, it's probably going to be turned into boot conditioner or something like that. So to prepare our beaver, and in order to make it not taste like a swamp, because it was trapped and not hunted, we salted the heck out of it to pull out any blood that was in there. And then we boiled it, same as you would making pulled pork, on a low heat for a long time, and then threw away the water. And then boiled it again, just to make sure. Again, low heat for a long time. And then I stripped all of the beaver meat off of the bone. And now we're cooking it again. It was not uncommon in the medieval era for meat to be cooked again and again in different ways. It might be roasted and then fried, might be boiled and then fried, might be boiled and then roasted. So in my attempts to make this taste better, that's what I've done. And so I'm going to heat it up again in this frying pan, because I had cooled it down and I'm starting to get that fishy smell in the house. And while we heat this beaver meat back up, I'm going to put some peas on to cook, because one of the medieval sources from the 1400s says that beavers go well with peas. Pea soup. I'm not going to make pea soup. I haven't got the stuff to make medieval pea soup, but I'm going to make another dish made with peas. It says it also mixes well with something called frumenty or ferment. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Frumenty, I think, which is like a cracked wheat porridge. I'm not going to make that either. I actually do like peas. So we're going to have beaver and peas. And we're going to, instead of making pea soup, which I don't really like that much, we're going to use a medieval English recipe for peas and bacon. So I'm going to use a medieval English recipe to go with this. We're going to have beaver and peas. The medieval English recipe calls for bacon and peas, but we're just going to bastardize it a bit, because I'm not a rich guy. I don't have all the fancy kitchen stuff. So yeah, I heard the rich guys like to eat their peas and bacon. I'm going to do the same thing with my beaver. So while this heats up and fries up, I'm going to put some peas on. So we got some peas cooking in the background here. The medieval recipe says that you boil your peas until they're soft, and then you mash them up and make kind of a peas porridge thing, and then you return them to the water and boil them until they're frothy and serve it forth. But that probably means it wants me to use dried peas, and I'm using fresh peas, so I'm just going to heat them up and mash them. And I don't have to worry about cooking it quite so long, because my peas are fresh. I live in 2022. Not that I haven't cooked with dried peas before, but if you got fresh, use them. So we've mashed up some peas here in our mortar and pestle. We're going to put those in. I'm not sure what spices were left in the mortar and pestle, but that's what we're having with our peas, because we can't be too fussy. No rich guys live here. And we'll get the last of our peas out of there. And then we have a healthy helping of beaver meat on top of that. And we will put, oh, pea got away there. And we'll put the beaver and the mortar and pestle away. So here we are with our supper of peas and beaver. We're a couple days into Lent, which apparently was pretty important in the medieval era. And this beaver, being a fish, is appropriate to eat on Lent. So this is pretty simple. Not much to it. Some of the sources say that beaver tastes like pork. I don't get that. If anything, I think it tastes more like beef. But your mileage may vary. It does have a bit of a fishy flavor to it. Let's get a bunch of those peas. But it's not a bad animal to eat. When I tried the tail, I didn't really care for that too much. And it's not 100% certain whether just the tail was okay for Lent or if the whole beaver was. But later sources, the whole beaver was considered acceptable to eat for Lent. So, you know, not too bad, really. I can see why, if you were a medieval person, this would be pretty good eating, especially for, I don't know, the 40 days of Lent or whatever, you know, between the middle of March and Easter. Changes around from year to year, I guess, in the calendar. But, yeah, it's pretty good stuff. Like, I'm just packing it away here. So, not a bad supper. I think beaver is far superior to fish. The way that I've cooked it anyway, it's quite tasty. It's still a little bit salty from the amount of salt I put in it to draw the blood out. But I'm gonna give this recipe a thumbs up. I mean, it's not like you can go to the grocery store and get a beaver and try this, but I don't know. You never know who you're going to come across that is a trapper who might say, "Hey, Llwyd, you want a beaver?" So, yeah, if you do get the opportunity to try it, highly recommend it. Apparently in the Scandinavian countries, there's like restaurants that sell it. So if you get a chance to try it, give it a go. I highly recommend it. And if you were a medieval person, this is pure gold. So yeah, that's all I got to say for today. If you liked the video, hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe. Do all the things. The channel's now on Rumble. I got a locals page that I don't do too much with. I'm just kind of like migrating videos over there. So hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. If you want to support the Canadian company, go take a look at it on Rumble. And if you want to shoot me a message or something, you got the comment section, and now you can go over to my page at Locals. There's no paywall or anything, you know, I just do this for hobby. And you can leave a message there, and you can send me all kinds of comments. And as always, if you don't like the video, share it with your enemies. I will punish them for free.